أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه العبد المؤيد والرسول المسدد حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد، وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته المنتجبين، واللعن الدائم على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك وأناخت برحلك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا، ورحمة الله وبركاته. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول، أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. One of the most controversial theories and one of the most understood theories in our time, in contemporary times, is the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih. It's one of the most important theories in contemporary times as well, for it has had profound impact on the contemporary history of the Middle East. Not just the Islamic Republic of Iran, but Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bahrain. And in fact, it's had an impact on the entire world. Nevertheless, there's much discussion regarding this theory. There's a lot of debates that surround this theory. There's a lot of controversy. And many people don't know exactly what it means. What is Wilayat al-Faqih? What does it mean? What is this theory? Is it accepted by all scholars? Is it rejected by all? Is it accepted by some and rejected by others? Is there any evidence to support Wilayat al-Faqih? And what is that evidence? Is there any evidence that is there any evidence against Wilayat al-Faqih? Tonight, my dear brothers and sisters, we will discuss the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih and explain it. And we will try to be as academic and objective as possible. Our goal, and I emphasize on this, is not to take sides. We are not supporting or promoting the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih, nor are we attacking it. We are simply explaining the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih, its history, the evidence used for it, and other political theories as well by contemporary jurists and mujtahids. It's an academic, objective discussion. It does not have political inclinations. We are not supporting, nor are we attacking. Only for the brothers and sisters, for the mu'mineen, to understand this theory. What does Wilayat al-Faqih mean? What does it stand for? And the position of contemporary scholars and jurists regarding this theory. Interestingly, the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih has caught the attention of many Western scholars and Orientalists. And I would not be exaggerating if I were to say that hundreds of articles, papers, books have been written about the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih, its implications, its history, and the position of various jurists regarding this theory. And it's unfortunate that we, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, this theory has come out from the jurists of Ahlul Bayt. We, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, some of us don't exactly know what it means, what the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih means. What does it entail? What is the proof and evidence for this theory? What is the history of this theory? And is it the only Shi'i political theory out there? Are there other Shi'i political theories held by contemporary jurists? Many of our youth don't have sufficient knowledge of this, and hence this will be the topic of our discussion tonight, inshaAllah. We will discuss the following. Number one, what is the debate on Wilayat al-Faqih? Exactly, is Wilayat al-Faqih questionable, or is there a certain aspect of Wilayat al-Faqih, a stage or a level of Wilayat al-Faqih that is debatable and controversial amongst jurists? This is one. Two, what is the history and evolution of the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih? We will touch upon this briefly. Third, what is the proof and evidence that scholars use to support the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih? Number four, Ayatollah Sayyid al-Khoi, what is his position regarding Wilayat al-Faqih and why did he hold that position? Number five, Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani, what is his position regarding Wilayat al-Faqih? Number six, and we will discuss various opinions. Number six, the position of Ayatollah al-Shaheed Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. What is his position towards Wilayat al-Faqih? We will see that al-Shaheed al-Sadr political theory evolved over time, and his political theory evolved and changed. So he didn't have one opinion. He had several opinions on Islam and politics. Number seven, the theory of Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad al-Shirazi, known as Shura al-Fuqaha. And how is that any different from Wilayat al-Faqih? We'll examine that briefly. And finally, number eight, the theory of Ayatollah al-Sheikh Muhammad Mahdi Shamsuddin and his political theory. We will examine that briefly as well, inshaAllah. So first of all jurists, all scholars accept Wilayat al-Faqih. But however, they disagree over how general is Wilayat al-Faqih. First of all, let's define what is Wilayat al-Faqih. Wilayat al-Faqih means the authority of the jurist, of the mujtahid. How vast is the authority of a mujtahid? All scholars believe that a jurist has authority. So there is wilaya. A mujtahid has wilaya. But the question is, how big is the wilaya? How expansive is the authority of a jurist? Here, there's various opinions. The least amount of authority that a jurist has is al-ifta wal-qada, to issue fatwas and to be a judge, to act as a judge in an Islamic court. So you have two sides that have an argument over divorce, over marriage, over money, over land, and they want an Islamic ruling. He has the authority to issue a judgment in a court, al-qada, and he has the authority to issue a fatwa. The difference between a fatwa and a ruling is that a fatwa is for all believers. It's for all mu'mineen, while a ruling is pertaining to the two who have a quarrel, who have an argument. So al-ifta wal-qada, all jurists accept this. All jurists accept this authority for a jurist. Al-wilaya, al-qadar al-mutayaqan min al-walaya. This is the least amount of authority that he could have. Two, some expanded and said, in addition to fatwa and qada, al-fatwa wal-qada, a jurist has the authority to deal with money. He has monetary authority, financial authority. Al-umur al-hasbiyya, meaning khums, he receives khums, zakat, sadaqat, the money of orphans. A jurist can preside over the money of orphans. A jurist can preside over the money that is lost, majhul al-malik, money that is lost. We don't know who the owner is. Money that does not have an owner. It becomes under the supervision of the jurist. Also, endowments, al-awqaf, even the shrines of Ahlul Bayt, which are awqaf, a jurist presides over these places. Why? Because they're all monetary. They're all financial. So al-umur al-hisbiyya, anything financial that deals with money and the imam had supervision over it, it goes to the jurist. And this is the opinion of Sayyid al-Khoi. Sayyid al-Khoi believes that the jurist has authority to issue a fatwa and to be a judge and an al-umur al-hisbiyya, over financial matters. There are some that went a step further and said that any authority that the imam has, a jurist also has. Any authority that the imam, infallible imam, has, it also belongs to the jurist. And this is the opinion of Sayyid al-Khomeini rahmatullah alayh, and some other scholars that we will talk about before him, because he was not the first to discuss Wilayat al-Faqih. Some accept Wilayat al-Faqih, but under conditions. For example, if the faqih is chosen by the people, or he's popular, he has a large following, or in his words, al-maqbuliyya 'inda an-nas, maqbuliyya 'amma 'inda an-nas. This is the opinion of Sayyid al-Sistani, as we shall see. Then he has the authority of a jurist, not just over fatwa, not just over issuing rulings and over monetary issues and financial issues. No, but authority to rule, political rule, to establish laws and rules and regulations. Authority of a jurist. But he has to have a large following. He has to have a major base, popularity, or perhaps even elected by the people, chosen by the people, as we shall see. So everyone accepts Wilayat al-Faqih, but it depends on how much of the wilayah they accept. Some, they restrict the wilayah only to fatwas and rulings. Other, they expand to financial issues. Other expand to all aspects. Those who accept Wilayat al-Faqih, they also disagree on whether the jurist can declare offensive jihad or he cannot declare offensive jihad. There are some, like Sayyid al-Khomeini, who accepts Wilayat al-Faqih but believes that offensive jihad, al-jihad al-ibtida'i, cannot be waged by a jurist. He can only wage defensive jihad, jihad al-difa'i. While there are others who believe, no, a jurist can declare offensive jihad, al-jihad al-ibtida'i. So all scholars accept wilayah. They all accept authority of a jurist, but they vary on how expansive is this wilayah. Now we come to the history of Wilayat al-Faqih. Sayyid al-Khomeini, who definitely believed in Wilayat al-Faqih, and he taught Wilayat al-Faqih when he was in Najaf for several years. Amongst his lectures in Bahth al-Kharij was al-Hukumat al-Islamiyya, Islamic government. And there he established his theory of Wilayat al-Faqih, or supported rather, because it was established before him. So how far can we draw back Wilayat al-Faqih? We can draw it back to the time of al-Muhaqqiq al-Karaki. Al-Muhaqqiq al-Karaki was a contemporary of Shah Tahmasp al-Safawi, from the Safavid dynasty. Al-Muhaqqiq al-Karaki was from Lebanon. He was brought from Lebanon to Iran, or he migrated, and he was invited by the Safavids to come and to rule. The power was split between Shah Tahmasp and Al-Muhaqqiq al-Karaki. And he was extremely powerful at the time. He was the ruler at the time of Shah Tahmasp. And he accepted Wilayat al-Faqih, and he implemented Wilayat al-Faqih. He appointed teachers, he appointed Friday prayer leaders, he would appoint individuals in the government. He exercised a lot of authority. Practically. But theoretically, Wilayat al-Faqih as a theory, the authority of a jurist or a jury counselor, traces back to Al-Muhaqqiq Al-Naraqi. Al-Muhaqqiq Al-Naraqi, one of the teachers of Shaykh Al-Ansari, who, if I am not mistaken, lived in Kashan. He was in Najaf and then he moved to Kashan. Al-Muhaqqiq Al-Naraqi, Al-Mawla Al-Naraqi, in his book Awaid Al-Ayyam, there he talks about Wilayat al-Faqih. And he suggests that the authority of a jurist is equivalent to the authority of an infallible ma'soom, as we shall see in the evidence that is stated. The authority of a jurist is no less than the authority of an infallible ma'soom. The same way an infallible ma'soom could order, could forbid, can rule, can lead an Islamic government, so too can a jurist. So the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih traces back to Al-Mawla al-Naraqi. And also, amongst the scholars that believed in Wilayat al-Faqih, not to that point of having the exact authority of the Imam, infallible Imam, but nevertheless a very expansive authority, is Sahib al-Jawahir, Shaykh Muhammad Hassan al-Najafi, who is known for his fiqhi book in 42 volumes, Jawahir al-Kalam fi Sharh Shara' al-Islam. He also believed that the authority of a jurist was not restricted just to issue a fatwa or issue a ruling or over monetary issues, but a jurist enjoyed an expansive amount of authority. Now there's books that have been written about Wilayat al-Faqih and its history. Those who want more about its evolution and its history can do more research on the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih. Now, what is the evidence and proof for this theory? Obviously, those who believe in Wilayat al-Faqih in the expansive term, not in the term of issuing a fatwa or being a judge in an Islamic court or dealing with money, with khums and zakat. No, when I say Wilayat al-Faqih, I mean in its general term, meaning that the jurist has the exact authority of an infallible Imam. What's the proof and evidence for that level of Wilayat al-Faqih, the highest level of Wilayat al-Faqih? Some jurists who believe in Wilayat al-Faqih, they support their argument through what is known as al-Tawqi' al-Sharif, the narration that from Imam al-Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajuhu al-Sharif, which came out as a signature. It came out in writing by the Imam. And it's a long hadith, but he says it's this section that institutes for al-Wilaya al-Mutlaqa, the obsolete authority of a jurist. وأما الحوادث الواقعة فارجعوا فيها إلى رواة حديثنا فإنهم حجتي عليكم وأنا حجة الله عليهم. As for current events, things that will happen in the future, al-Hawadith al-Waqi'a means anything that happened in the greater occultation, after the minor occultation, once the Imam has fully disappeared. In current events, refer to the narrators of our hadith, the transmitters of our hadith, meaning the jurists, scholars. فَإِنَّهُمْ حُجَّتِي عَلَيْكُمْ. They are my authority over you. I am leaving them as an authority over you. Hujjah. They are my hujjah over you. فَإِنَّهُمْ حُجَّتِي عَلَيْكُمْ وَأَنَا حُجَّةُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِمْ. And I am their authority from Allah Azza wa Jal. So I am an authority over jurists and scholars, and they are an authority over you. Of course, there's a debate over the chain of narrators of this hadith, at-Tawqi' al-Sharif, وَأَمَّا الْحَوَادِثُ الْوَاقِعَةِ. Some have said it is authentic, others have said it is not so authentic. I will leave that debate for specialists. So this is one hadith. Another hadith in Tuhaf al-Uqul. The hadith says, مجاري الأمور والأحكام بيد العلماء بالله الأمناء على حلاله وحرامه. مجاري الأمور, meaning laws, regulations, rules are in the hands of scholars, the scholars of Allah, those who know Allah, al-ulama'u billah, those who have knowledge of Allah. Al-umana'u ala halalihi wa haramih, those who have been entrusted with Allah's halal and haram, His laws. And another hadith, al-fuqaha umana'u ar-rusul, the jurists are the trusted ones by the messengers. So they are entrusted by the messengers. And messengers have an obsolete authority or an absolute authority. So too are the scholars. And another hadith by Rasulullah, Allahumma arham khulafa'i. Qila ya Rasulullah, wa man khulafa'ak? He would say, may Allah have mercy upon my successors. He was asked, who are your successors? He said, الَّذِينَ يَأْتُونَ بَعْدِي يَرْوُونَ حَدِيثِي وَسُنَّتِي. They are those who come after me and will narrate my sunnah and narrate my traditions. Who are they? Who narrates the traditions? It's the jurists. So they are the successors of Rasulullah. They are the successors of Rasulullah. That means they enjoy the authority that Rasulullah enjoys. But the most important piece of evidence and proof for al-wilaya al-amma lil-faqih, for the absolute or the obsolete authority of the jurist, is this: Maqbulat Umar bin Handala, a hadith narrated by Umar bin Handala from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. And this hadith is called Maqbula. It has been accepted by scholars. Most scholars accept this hadith, the vast majority, with a few exceptions, like Sayyid al-Khoi, for example, because he says Umar bin Handala has not been authenticated, hence we cannot accept this hadith. But the vast majority of scholars, they accept Maqbulat Umar bin Handala. So he asks the Imam that if there's two judges and they conflict, so one rules in the favor of Zayd, for example, and another judge rules in the favor of Amr, and each one supports his ruling based on a tradition, a hadith. So there's conflicting narrations. What do we do when there's two conflicting narrations? The Imam tells him that you do this, you do that, you take what conforms to the Quran, you do. He gives him a whole set of guidelines as to what to do when two narrations conflict, until he reaches this. فإني قد جعلته عليكم حاكما إياكم والتحاكم. Do not go to the judges of the court, meaning the oppressors, meaning don't go to the judges appointed by the government of the time, by the oppressors, by the tyrants, like Harun al-Rashid, like al-Mansur, like al-Ma'mun, and so on and so forth. Don't go to their judges. You have your own judges. Your judges are your scholars. Go to your judges. فَإِنِّي قَدْ جَعَلْتُهُ عَلَيْكُمْ حَاكِمًا. For I have made him a ruler over you. I have made him a ruler over you. Some say, well, what does that mean, حَاكِمًا? What does that mean, حَاكِمًا? حَاكِمًا means he has the right to rule. A jurist enjoys religious and political authority. Hakim means ruler. Why didn't he say قاضيًا? He could have said, I made him a judge. But he says, حَاكِمًا. I've made him a ruler over you. That gives him the authority to rule. So anything that a ruler could do, establish rules, regulations, laws, punishments. He could set a penal code, a penal system. He could collect taxes. He could establish a government. This is what a hakiman means. In another hadith, Sahihat Abi Khadija or Hasanat Abi Khadija, here the Imam says, فَإِنِّي أَنظُرُ إِلَىٰ رَجُلٍ مِّنْكُمْ. Again, he's telling his companions, do not go to the courts and judges of the government, the non-Shi'i government. Rather, see a man from you who knows halal and haram, a jurist, a scholar. فَإِنِّي قَدْ جَعَلْتُهُ عَلَيْكُمْ قَاضِيًا. I have made him a judge. He's a judge. So some say if he's a judge, if he can be a judge, that means he could be a ruler. That means he could judge over people. He could rule over people. What does a judge do? He issues rulings. He has the right to issue rulings. And another hadith by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, إن العلماء ورثة الأنبياء. Scholars are the heirs of prophets. وذلك أن الأنبياء لم يورثوا درهما ودينارا. Of course, they didn't inherit from them dinars and dirhams. Rather, وإنما ورثوا أحاديث من أحاديثهم. But rather, they've inherited the narrations. The ulama have inherited the narrations of the prophets. And prophets have authority over people, and so too are the ulama. These ahadith have been used to support the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih al-Mutlaq, al-Wilaya al-Amma al-Faqih, al-Wilaya al-Mutlaq al-Faqih, the obsolete authority of a jurist, in which he can do whatever he sees fit for the ummah, whatever he sees is in the best interest of his nation. He could set rules and laws and regulations. He could establish taxes. He could establish jails, punishments. Anything that he feels is necessary to uphold an Islamic government and establish an Islamic government and protect Islamic laws and Islamic rights. Now, we come to Sayyid al-Khoi. Sayyid al-Khoi, he says that many of these narrations that are used to support the obsolete wilaya, authority of a jurist, they're not reliable, either in their sanad, the chain of narrators, or in their content. For example, Maqbulat Umar bin Handala, which is the strongest piece of evidence, in which the Imam says, فَإِنِّي قَدْ جَعَلْتُهُ عَلَيْكُمْ حَاكِمًا. I have made him a ruler over you. So the says Umar bin Handala is not reliable, and hence we cannot take this tradition. And some of the students of Sayyid al-Sistani, for example, like a Sayyid Taqi al-Qummi, who doesn't accept Umar bin Handala as well, he would reject this hadith based on the chain of narrators. And this is the most important evidence. Other narrations, most of the other narrations that we just listed, they have a problem in their sanad, in their isnad. Of course, it varies from opinion to opinion. It varies from theory to theory based on Rijal studies, based on the opinions that a jurist has in Rijal. It will influence him in accepting certain ahadith. So based on their opinions in Rijal, based on their mabani, what they've instituted in Ilm al-Rijal, they'll either accept these hadith or they don't. Sayyid al-Khoi rejects many of these hadith, except Sahihat Abi Khadija. He considers it as an authentic narration, but the Imam doesn't say, I've made you a ruler. He says, I've made you a judge. Or he doesn't say, I've made him a ruler. He says, I've made him a judge. He says, I accept this. A jurist could be a judge. Two people have a quarrel. He judges over them. But being a judge is one thing, and being a ruler to establish a government is something else. So Sayyid al-Khoi rejects many of these proofs and evidence. Yes, Sayyid al-Khoi, he refers to a hadith known as Sahihat Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Bazi', in which it's regarding financial issues, monetary issues. And the Imam tells one of the companions that, yes, you can deal with this money. Someone like you, mithlika wa amthalik, can deal with money or finances, financial issues. You have the authority to deal with financial issues. So Sayyid Khoi believes that a jurist has the authority over financial issues like khums, like zakat, like sadaqat, al-awqaf, endowments, majhul al-malik, money that doesn't have an apparent owner, amwal al-aytam, amwal al-qussar, the money of orphans. A jurist has the authority to preside over these financial issues. We come to Sayyid al-Sistani. Sayyid al-Sistani, Hafidhahullah, accepts Wilayat al-Faqih in its general term. Sayyid al-Khoi sees that a jurist does not have the authority to establish an Islamic government, while Sayyid al-Sistani, he believes that he does. And I will read you his exact statement so that we don't make a mistake in telling the exact opinion of Sayyid al-Sistani. So he goes further than Sayyid al-Khoi, however, with one condition, that the jurist has to have public acceptability. People should be accepting of him, meaning he should not be a dictator. He should not come and enforce himself over the people. He should be accepted. Now, how is he accepted? Either by polling. The Sayyid doesn't tell us how. So it's either by polling or by elections or by bay'ah, for example. People come and give their allegiance to that jurist, as what happened to Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr rahmatullah alayh in his final years, in his final months, or the final years of his life. People came and gave allegiance to him when he was in Iraq in 1979. Sayyid Sistani says this: الولاية فيما يعبر عنها في كلمات الفقهاء بالأمور الحسبية تثبت لكل فقيه جامع لشروط التقليد. The authority over financial matters, this is an authority for all jurists. Any jurist who has knowledge, ijtihad, and is adil, he's righteous. وأما الولاية فيما هو أوسع منها من الأمور العامة. However, as for the wilayah, the authority that is more expansive than this, more general than this, meaning the right to rule, to command, to establish rules and on laws and regulations. التي يتوقف عليها نظام المجتمع الإسلامي. That authority that is required to establish an Islamic community, an Islamic system, an Islamic nation. فلمن تثبت له من الفقهاء ولظروف إعمالها شروط إضافية. This sort of wilayah has more conditions. There's conditions to this sort of wilayah, the general term, this general sense of wilayah. ومنها, among the conditions for this wilayah, ومنها أن يكون للفقيه مقبولية عامة لدى المؤمنين. Among the conditions is that he should have public acceptability. The public should accept him. مقبولية عامة. People accept him to be a ruler. They accept him to be a hakim over them, either through elections or through polling or through bay'ah, but they voice their opinion and say, we accept this faqih to rule over us. So there's no dictatorship. The faqih cannot be a dictator in the sense that he enforces himself over them. This is the opinion of Sayyid al-Sistani. We come to Shaheed Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr rahmatullah alayh. Shaheed al-Sadr, when we look at his teachings and his philosophy and his political philosophy, we see that it has evolved over time. He held one opinion, and then he moved, and that opinion evolved to another theory, and the second theory evolved into a third theory. Those who have studied the life and thought of Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, and specifically his political theory, they believe that his political theory evolved in three stages. In the first stage, Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr believed in a government that is chosen through shura, basically the rule of the majority. He believed that the government should be elected by the majority through shura. So basically, Shaykh Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr believed in democracy, that the government has to be democratic, ruled by the people, chosen by the people, elected by the people. So there is no mentioning of a faqih, of a jurist being in power. It's a government elected by the people. This was his first theory. And then it evolved into Wilayat al-Faqih. So he believed that a government should be headed by a faqih, by a jurist that is chosen by other jurists. Chosen by other jurists. So jurists come together and the majority of them choose one jurist out of them to rule, to be the head of the state, head of state. This was his second theory. And then that evolved into a third theory, and that's the theory of khilafah. He believed in the caliphate, that there needs to be a successor, a khalifa, but that khalifa is chosen by the marja', by the jurist, by the religious authority. So the religious authority does not necessarily need to be the caliph himself. He does not need to be the khalifa himself. But the khalifa has to be chosen by the marja'. He has to receive blessings by the marja' and by the jurist. This is the political theory, a summary, a very brief summary of the political theory of Sayyid Muhammad Baqir As-Sadr. Those who wish to know further may read books and articles by him and about him. Then we come to Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Al-Shirazi, rahmatullah alayh, who was known for his theory of Shura al-Fuqaha. Sayyid Al-Shirazi developed this theory in the 80s. After the Islamic Revolution in Iran, after the successful revolution and the rise of the theory of Wilayat al-Faqih, Sayyid Al-Shirazi developed the theory of Shura al-Fuqaha. And what he means by this is that there should not be one sole ruler, one faqih to rule the Islamic nation, only one individual in power, but it should be a shura of several jurists. Several jurists lead and rule the country by majority. It would be by the majority. So let's say 20 jurists, 30 jurists will rule the country, and it goes by the rule of the majority. If the majority of them agree on a law, on a regulation, on a tax, for example, then it would go. So this theory became known as Shura al-Fuqaha, and it tried to collaborate between Wilayat al-Faqih, the authority of a jurist, because the Shura is made up of jurists, and at the same time collaborate between Wilayat al-Faqih and Shura, democracy, the rule of the majority. So he tried to make them compatible. He said Shura al-Fuqaha gets best of both. It's jurists that are ruling, and it's through Shura, it's through consultation, it's through democracy, or it's through the rule of the majority. And there's been books written about this theory, the theory of Shura al-Fuqaha. Lastly, Sheikh Muhammad Mahdi Shamsuddin. Of course, there's other theories, and I don't mean to restrict the Shi'i political theories by contemporary scholars only in these theories. No, there's other political theories as well, but I'm mentioning the most important of them, or the ones that are most well known. The final one is by Sheikh Muhammad Mahdi Shamsuddin. Sheikh Muhammad Mahdi Shamsuddin believed in a theory called Wilayat al-Ummah ala nafsiha. The nation has authority over itself. So it's not the authority of a jurist, and there's no Shura al-Fuqaha, and there's no Khilafah, there's no Caliphate. Rather, it's the Ummah presiding over itself. It's the Ummah that has authority over itself. How? Through elections, through democracy, through the rule of the majority. The Ummah chooses through the majority. They choose those who will rule over them. He believed that this is the Quranic theory to rule through the verse وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ, and their affairs are of consultation amongst them. And he believed that religious scholars should not be involved into political leadership. They should not be involved into politics. Why? Because it is not their specialty. Their specialty is fiqh, is halal and haram. It is not politics. It's not foreign policy. It's not healthcare and an education system and so on and so forth. ولاية الأمة على نفسها. This has been a brief summary of Wilayat al-Faqih, what it means, the different levels of wilaya, and what Sayyid al-Khoi believed in, and what was his proof, what Sayyid al-Sistani believes in, the theory of Sayyid al-Khomeini and where it came from, and the different theories of different other contemporary jurists like Al-Shahid al-Sadr, Al-Sayyid al-Shirazi, Al-Shaykh Muhammad Mahdi, Shamsuddin, rahmatullahi alayhim ajma'een. Now, Wilayatul Faqih, the authority of a jurist, comes from where? It comes from where? The authority of an imam. In Maqbulat Umar ibn Hanzala, the imam says, فَإِنِّي قَدْ جَعَلْتُهُ عَلَيْكُمْ حَاكِمًا, I have made him a ruler over you. So the authority of a jurist comes from the authority of an imam. That's the origin of Wilayat al-Faqih. And unfortunately, there are some who might have a problem with Wilayat al-Faqih. They'll come and hit Wilayat al-Imam. They develop a problem with imamah. Because they have a political problem with Wilayat al-Faqih, they'll come and try to eradicate imamah in itself and say there's no such thing as imamah. Because they see that Wilayat al-Faqih comes from imamah. So they say, let's go to the origin and hit the origin, al-imamah. What is it to be an imam? Imam Hussein alayhi salam tells us what it means to be an imam. When he was asked for allegiance to Yazid, for Imam Hussein this was illogical. The ummah is making a choice between Imam Hussein and Yazid. Someone who's infallible, someone who comes from the household of Rasulullah, who opened his eyes hearing the voice of Jibreel bring down the verses of the Quran upon the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. From day one till the day that Rasulullah departed. You bring someone like Imam Hussein and you compare him to someone like Yazid, someone who was a murderer, someone who was alcoholic, someone who would gamble, who had nothing to do with Islam. This person sits on the throne of Rasulullah. Rasulullah, of course, did not have a throne, but this is metaphoric. He sits on the chair of Khilafah and leads the Muslim nation. How is this possible? Imam Hussein says, إِنَّا أَهْلُ بَيْتِ النُّبُوَّةِ وَمَوْضِعَ الرَّسَالَةِ وَمُخْتَلِفِ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. The angels would descend in our home. The Quran was revealed in my home, in my house, and the house of my prophet, my grandfather. We are the infallible ones. Imamah requires infallibility. Was Yazid or the father of Yazid or the grandfather of Yazid anywhere close to this? How can they be compared? Abu Sufyan, in the battle of Uhud, he would say, "U'lu Hubal." Call on the name of Hubal. Muawiyah, when he would hear the name of Rasulullah and the adhan, he would say, "La wallah, dafnan dafna." I will bury this name alive. As for Yazid, he would say, لعبت هاشم بالملك فلا خبر جاء ولا وحي ينزل. Hashim or Beni Hashim, they're playing with rulership and leadership. And there is no revelation. لا خبر جاء ولا وحي. There's no news and there's no revelation. This is their family. His grandmother is Hind, Akilat al-Akbad, the eater of liver, eater of livers. She ate the liver of Hamza. This person is compared to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Is this not injustice? This person could be an imam. This could be the Khalifa of Rasulullah. This is an injustice. That is why you see those who fought with Imam Hussein, they saw the injustice. They saw there's no comparison between the two individuals. Absolutely no individual. The elders, the children, even the youth, even the little children, they saw a difference between the two. That is why on the day of Ashura, one of those who fought bravely was a young man whom the books of Maqtal don't even mention his name. He's mentioned as such, غُلَامٌ قُتِلَ أَبَاهُ فِي الْمَعْرَكَةِ. A child whom his father was killed in the battlefield. Who was he? We don't even know. We don't know his name. Maybe there's some maqatil that mention his name. But the vast majority, they don't mention a name for him. But look at this young man. He was 10 years old. Look at this child. Look at his mind, his brain, his mentality. He came to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He asked for permission to fight. They said no. Imam Hussein said no. Why? Imam Hussein said to himself that his father died just moments earlier, and he will die as well. What will I say to his mother? His mother will be left without anyone. So he told him, I can't let you enter the battlefield. Today your father died. Your mother will remain by herself. He said, Sayyidi wallah innaha ummi allati ba'athatni. It is my mother who's sending me to ask for permission. Imam Hussein refused. The child went, removing his tears that were streaming down his cheeks. He went to his mother. He informed her of the Imam's answer. She held his hand and she came to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He told him, Ya Aba Abdullah, أتثكل بك أمك الزهراء ولا أثكل بولدي? Your mother, Fatima al-Zahra, will mourn you, and you will not give me the honor to mourn my child? Allow him to fight. Allow him to enter the battlefield. Imam Hussein alayhi salam accepted. He fought. The child, his sword, he was so young that his sword would drag on the ground. سيفه يخط على الأرض. He entered the battlefield and he began to recite حسين أميري ونعم الأمير سرور فؤاد البشير النذير علي وفاطمة والداه فهل تعلمون له من نظير. This child, he fought so bravely until he fell to the ground. He shouted, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Ali al-Akbar rushed to the child. He sat next to him. He removed the blood and the dust and the dirt from his face. And he asked him, what is his last wish? He said, yes, I do have a wish. انقلوا رحل أمي إلى رحالكم. Let my mother stay tonight. Let my mother stay in your tents. Today she lost me and she lost my father. Today my mother will be lonely. Don't let my mother be lonely. Let her sleep in your tents. His mother, when she was bereaved of her son, she was so proud of her child. She grabbed a pole and she entered the battlefield. She wanted to fight. And she would say, أنا عجوز سيدي ضعيفة خاوية بالية نحيفة أضربكم دون بني فاطمة الشريفة أضربكم بالسيف بضربة عنيفة دون بني فاطمة الشريفة. I will fight you on behalf of the children of Fatima al-Zahra. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he came and he took her back to the camp and he said that jihad is not wajib upon women. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العلي الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا الله. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا عيبا إلا سترته ولا خوفا إلا آمنته ولا رزقا إلا بسطته ولا شملا إلا جمعته ولا مرضا إلا شفيته ولا غائبا إلا حفظته وأدنيته ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة لك فيها رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا قضيتها ويسرتها يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.